Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Retail Academy. The session today will be dedicated to how to acquire new customers with display and discovery solutions. And you will be spending the next hour with me. My name is Anna Kovalenko. It's my 7th year at Google now, and half of that time I've passionately spent bringing the display solutions to our customers to be sure that they're successful with the whole suite of Google's products. This is the 5th session, and we will actually be building upon the material that was presented to you in the previous sessions where we were covering search and shopping, and I will also be building bridges for you towards the sessions to follow related to measurement and to video. And so you know that Google is quite a collaborative environment, so you will see in the session today that the same applies to our products. They're very collaborative, there are bridges between them, and all of that ultimately to help you be as successful as you can. About the session today, there's a whole team of specialists waiting for your questions to answer them to be sure that you get the most from this session. So in case anything pops into your mind that you would like to be sure that we answer before the session ends, please drop it into the comments section and you will get your response from an expert. So let's begin. The next hour we will spend talking with you about, first things first, the consumer journey. Sounds like a very standard thing to start talking about, but it is very important because a couple of things here that, first things first, how do consumers behave? And do they behave differently when we're thinking about different products? For example, do consumers buy TVs the same way as they buy dresses? Spoiler, not really. Their behavior is different. Secondly, once you have that knowledge, how do you connect with those customers? How do you differentiate between who has a purchase intent and who doesn't? What's that easiest and strongest suite of products that will get you to be successful with those solutions? Thirdly, now that you've defined who your best potential audience is, how do you inspire them to act, to trust your brand, to come and buy from you, to become your customers? And then finally, now that we've built the groundwork and understood how do you speak to the right people with the right message, an important point here is how do you allocate the right resource to be sure that you truly are successful with your strategy. And here we will also be talking about the framework of full value, because again, display and video are a bit of a different world from search, and you need to understand the specifics about measurement here so that you never miss a beat, so that you always understand where the value is coming from. Let's get started. The consumer purchase journey today is, of course, complex. And so I think that many of you would be familiar with the Pareto principle that was discovered something about 150 years ago. And it was saying that 80% of the value for you is coming from 20% of your customers. That was true, that is true to a large extent. However, when it comes to digital consumers, unfortunately, less and less that's becoming the case. You will see that in this whole world of choice where customers constantly switch between different providers of services, between different products, they're simply always on the lookout for what's best for them. And loyalty has become a little bit fickle. So you will, in fact, have your share of loyal customers. However, this relation to the value that those loyal customers bring, research shows typically goes towards 50-20, not 80-20. And so a lot of that other value comes from customers somewhere in the middle who are neither loyal to you, nor loyal to anyone else, but they're constantly on the lookout for the best value. Let's take a closer look at those customers. So one thing that's true today is that customers are constantly in that discovery mode. It means that they're always on the lookout for what's best for them. And also they're grateful when someone helps them sort through that chaos and get to the best product as quickly as possible. And so here what we call we're talking about the messy middle, because we start with a trigger. I want something. I want that at the best cost. I want that to be high quality. And then we do a lot of research, which can consist of multiple touch points. It can be interaction with people. It can be interaction with digital media. Something inspires us. We don't make those decisions quickly enough. And I'll show you just one example in just a moment. And then finally, after we've evaluated our options, given it a thought, we bought something. And then interestingly, when maybe 10 years ago, we'd be talking about this as such complex behavior relates to expensive products. For example, when we're buying an expensive TV, that's how we would behave. We would have multiple touch points. When you're buying a car, of course, you're doing long research. But Interestingly, this is also true for very low value products. So people just like to know their choices. They like evaluating them before they make up their minds. And just to bring this into a concrete example, I wanted to share with you my experience, very recent one. So this year is a big year for me. I got engaged. And of course, everything comes with that. So we're planning the wedding, we're looking at the venues, I'm planning my dresses and accessories, so is my fiancé is thinking about what he will wear and what not. All of those wonderful things you like to plan. And when it came to buying wedding shoes, I had some very specific requirements. I wanted them to be beautiful and comfortable. I'm not a fan of the high heels that I would be suffering the whole wedding in. So seemingly a simple task, but it was really difficult to find them, I tell you. So first things first, like every common digital consumer, I read across different apps for inspiration. For example, I spent a whole bunch of time on Pinterest trying to see those examples of great shoes. What wasn't helpful, though, is that some of those inspiring examples were nowhere to be found to buy. So after that, I had to think of something else. Okay, how about I go and start reading about that on blogs, on all sorts of social media, whatever it is. How about I start looking at different shoe sellers? And I truly found the brand only after a friend of mine prompted to me that when she lived in France, there's a brand there that is not expensive, that is high quality and also very comfortable. Bingo for me. And so I went on the website. I actually found the shoe I wanted. They had the perfect kind of coloring that I was looking for. However, since my wedding is on the next year, I decided to wait a bit until maybe there's going to be some discounts. And guys, long story short, what really convinced me to buy was, interestingly, as you see here right now on the slide, was that dynamic ad when one morning I woke up and as always I was reading my morning news and then I saw an ad where there it was, my shoe, and there was a little label of a discount today. So what happened here and what does it mean for us? By us, I mean marketeers. First of all, there was a little bit of that machine learning that convinced me at the end, because that little label of a discount, that was surfaced real time. That happens when you're working with ads based on feeds and you are using smart bidding and automation. And if there is a price drop, it will be automatically surfaced within a second after you've published it. So that was actually quite important that I saw that so I could buy that shoe before someone else had snatched it. But the other thing that was really interesting for me when I was analyzing it as an expert in display is, why is it that I only saw that convincing last point as a remarketing ad? Why did this wonderful brand not think of prompting me that they have this high value, great shoes for the wedding before, when I was in the process of researching? Because truly I would have completely missed out on them had that not been my friend who told me about it. So for you, I'd like to help you today to understand how do you not miss out on those opportunities? How do you not miss out on that complex middle? And where possible, you actually prompt what value you would give to your customers and convince them before they even start searching or before they even come to your website. So now we're transitioning into building out that strategy. And one thing you always need to keep in mind is that being there as the last touch point is not sufficient to ensure that you are selected. You need to be there ahead of time. You need to be there helping customers who are in the process of making their decision. And so when we look into what is the interaction of customers with the actual media, what is that media mix, where do they make those decisions? Previously, again, I'm always going to say 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, customers went and asked for advice from search a lot. But today, search expanded beyond just search. And so we see that 59% of consumers have found their favorite brands while doing things like searching and watching on YouTube, while catching up on interests, news, and their daily updates on discovery feeds. And finally, of course, while spending a lot of time every day on Gmail, where they get all sorts of promotions, but also go there for work and for interaction with their friends and families. And so what this means to us is that wherever it is that users make their purchase decisions, you need to be there to stay top of mind for them. And here's where I'm going to bring a couple of examples to help you understand that it's actually quite difficult to understand what exactly that media mix is for different products. So let's take apparel as an example. So with apparel, of course, we know that people are convinced by visual, but they also search a lot. That's the example with me, who was trying to find the answers of those convenient but beautiful shoes for the wedding. And so you see that a lot of those searches for example, clothing happen on Google search, but interestingly for sneakers, the top searches didn't necessarily mention a specific retailer. They were just searches of sneakers. Now, when it comes to YouTube, for example, the top searches on YouTube would mention specific brands when it comes to sneakers, but then for men's and women's clothing, not so much. However, it's a different story when we're talking about consumer electronics, and this is quite easy to understand because when with clothing and shoes, there's a good variety of choice of high quality, good price providers and brands. But when it comes to consumer electronics, of course, there's a set of electronics sellers and manufacturers who are famous for quality, and then some other emerging ones who could be high quality, but they're not that well known. And so here, when customers are doing their searches, they are analyzing for specific brands. What is the feedback for that specific brand before they go about comparing prices and buying them? And so you see that this proportion of how much time did people spend searching on actual search, searching on video, and also how exactly did they search based on brand sort of keywords or more generically, it actually differs already within the retail categories of clothing and then consumer electronics. And one thing that's important, again, to emphasize here is that there will be a connection of customers with you through different media, and that is just the truth today, that people will be looking for their answers in search, display, video, social, and depending on the category of the product, some of that may have higher presence than the other one. And so, for example, with high-tech, with electronics, with high-tech electronics, there is higher reliance on video reviews and on search results, and so to say, less so on the specifically visual social presence. The story might be different if we're talking about a high-end retailer. Now, with all of that complex behavior, one thing that your customers value is helpfulness. So if you help them find that right answer as quickly as possible, they will act fast. And in fact, 85% of consumers took action, bought a product within a day after they saw the ad that actually tells them about the product that satisfies their needs that they were looking for. And so let's translate this into the world of Google. How is it that you can connect with customers in the easiest way across those multiple digital touchpoints? And this is where today, specifically this year, we will be paying higher attention to discovery campaigns, because discovery is our most premium visual format where you can talk to your potential customers, show your brand in an uncluttered environment, and knowing that people actually have an intent to buy. So let's talk about where discovery campaigns sit with the other solutions, and also how do you connect with the right kind of people when you're working with discovery campaigns. First things first, in the previous sessions, you had been talking about smart shopping. This is the prime, premium, most important product for retailers, because all of the innovation, how to drive the highest impact, the highest revenue for a retailer, comes first and foremost to smart shopping campaigns. They were designed for you. They are the place for the ads, the feed-based ads, where as much as possible you're promoting your products specifically and driving the highest value out of those sales. Discovery comes as a next step, and the main difference here is that while smart shopping campaigns are designed to contain everything feed-based, based on your product feed, discovery campaigns are designed to bring your brand to customers that are looking for a product, but they might not necessarily want to see a specific product yet. So this is a way to help connect with the customers who are searching, but not searching for a specific product yet, and tell them that you are this great seller, you have what they want, come and take a look at what I have. And now, of course, between discovery and review for action, I'll touch upon it in just a moment, but there are unique bridges in how we're thinking about audiences with intent. There's also a great way to transition to video campaigns from display campaigns, and actually the other way around. And then finally, if you're in a state where you have all of those solutions and your presence is quite high, you have a high share of voice in the market, then smart display campaigns can allow you to bring that share of voice to practically 100% and capture all of the intent of people, not just in search, but outside of search in display. And now let's take a closer look at our owned and operated solutions like Discovery Campaigns to Review for Action. One interesting thing there is that what we think about when we're building those products is how do we differentiate between people with a purchase intent and people who are just interested but don't yet have a purchase intent. And the clue to this is, of course, search. And so when you're working with Discovery Campaigns, I don't know if you knew that, but when you're working with custom intent, this is in fact people who have been searching. So custom intent is based off search queries and searches. And so this is in fact your ability to find people who have been searching but didn't connect with you outside of search at the moment when they're still very, very interested. So when you start that journey with Discovery Campaigns, first and foremost, think of course about remarketing and your own customer match lists. But then as the second part of this, think about onboarding customers who have an intent to buy your products and have been searching already through custom intent. And so just to visualize, conceptualize this for you so that you're very comfortable with this framework of custom intent, imagine that 100 people are looking for your products on search. Let's say your click-through rate is something like 10%. This means that 10 of them will click on your ad and come to your website. And then maybe your conversion rate is something like 2%. So what this means is out of those 10 who came to your website, 2 might actually buy from you right away. What happens to the other 90 that didn't click on your ad in the first place? Well, provided that they continue to search and provided that you are always present in search, you might have that second chance to show your ad to them again. Maybe they won't search again. That's the thing. Those people may have not clicked on your website. They may have clicked on someone else and went on to someone else's website, or they didn't find their answer. And then for the time being, they stopped searching. This is that missed opportunity that if we only rely on search, there is no way for us to reconnect with those people. But this is exactly that opportunity to capture people with that high intent, help them find those answers with custom intent, because to those 90 people, you would talk through custom intent on Discovery and Review for Action. And so, interestingly, seems very difficult to explain, but the strategy itself looks simple and very easy. We're talking here about 2 types of campaigns: Discovery Campaigns, Review for Action campaigns, with 2 ad groups: remarketing, customer match, and custom intent. And that custom intent audience, mind you, when you create that, you can use that for Discovery and Review for Action. It works exactly the same way. But I want to be sure that you know the best practices very well. So this is the general concept. Let's bring it into the tactics. So first and foremost, with first-party audiences, so to say, or with remarketing lists, there's, of course, the classics. So if you're talking to customers who generally have been on your website, didn't necessarily go into specific product categories, you can give a more general message or maybe an indicator that you have some seasonal sales for them to come back to you. If you specifically want to engage with people that engage with specific categories on your website, of course, segment that out into ad groups and very tailored creatives. And tailoring creatives to audiences, guys, I'm not joking, 70 or 80% of your success depends on that. So first of all, when you're even selecting those remarketing lists, splitting them out, when you're creating your custom intent audiences, always be sure to group them by theme, by product, by brand. It doesn't have to be 100 different audiences. Think maybe about your most important categories first, but please don't mix men's shoes and women's shoes in the same custom intent, because then you'll also have a hard time having a creative that speaks to the both types of audiences. So maybe it makes sense that if you have sort of like a set of, let's take electronics as an example here. Clearly people buying TVs are different from people buying vacuum cleaners. You will need 2 separate custom intent audiences for them with respective tailored creatives for them. Keep that in mind. And now some in-depth practices here, which I find are really exciting, is that between display and video, if you have remarketing lists of video viewers, you can use them in Discovery Campaigns. Love that. So we are building bridges between the solutions here. All right. Now, and also something that's kind of unique for Discovery Campaigns is the little setting there, which we call the audience expansion toggle on. Seems like, audience expansion toggle on, maybe I need it, maybe I don't need it. You need it. It really, first of all, helps fix any mistakes of any manual setup. It will be there, machine learning will be there to back you up and help you talk to the customers with the highest intent. But then secondly, what happens here is once you start getting your first conversions and you're happy with those results, audience expansion will ensure to consistently be looking for people that behave the same way and are likely to convert at exactly the same acquisition cost. So this is pretty much a no-loss option to constantly ensure that whatever is working, you get the most out of that. Now, assuming that you have your basic setup, you have your remarketing and customer match and custom intent, what do you do next? Those are the people who are already searching or who know you already. But then there's a whole set world of people who need your product but are not on search yet. And these are the ones that we speak to through in-market audiences, similar audiences, and live events to a certain extent. And let me actually paint the suite of products that work with those audiences. So this is where I bring Smart Display into the mix, because for your discovery interview for action campaigns, the next step would be to add in-market audiences and similar audiences, because these are audiences with a purchase intent. They simply haven't started searching yet. So you talk to them early in their search journey. And then Smart Display campaigns do not capitalize on specifically search behavior, but it looks at those micro signals that give an understanding that people have an intent to buy. So it does in fact also work with custom intent in market, similar audiences, remarketing, all from the simple interface of the one campaign. However, it just is not tied to search behavior. So this actually represents your full performance opportunity with display and video. And now, since we brought Smart Display campaigns into the mix, there is something unique to them, which is you can always add a feed for dynamic remarketing and prospecting. Just be sure if you're doing that it's not conflicting with your Smart Shopping campaigns, because ideally you shouldn't be doing exactly the same thing that you're doing in Smart Shopping already. So think about maybe it should be a certain different category of products. Maybe you want to be maximizing sales there, so you're using a different type of bidding, like maximize conversions. But the opportunity is there. If you attach a feed to a Smart Display campaign, it will boost the return from this campaign by 20%. And now finally, for those of you who are at a stage where you've maximized your performance opportunity and you are ready to move to the next step, we're talking about amplifying awareness of audiences with you and about upper funnel audiences. This also, of course, applies to those of you who take a top-down approach, where first of all, you know your best audience, you're speaking to them through awareness campaigns, and as you've done that, you're taking it down the funnel and converging those people with performance solutions. And so this is the category where affinity audiences and live events fall into. And so please do not try to use affinity audiences for performance. They're not geared for performance. They do not capture intent. They just capture people's long-term strong passions and interests. And so this is the category to talk to with your awareness campaigns. And so what that would look like is that typically you would switch to CPM bidding instead of conversions-based bidding for those audiences. So anything sort of below those awareness audiences, similar in market, custom intent, remarketing, whether it's on video or on display or on discovery, we recommend you pair them with smart bidding because they are built for performance. So you need to pair them with performance-oriented bidding. But if we're talking about upper funnel, then there you want to maximize reach, and the best way to maximize reach is CPM bidding. However, for discovery campaigns, CPM bidding at the moment is not available. So you would create an affinity audiences discovery campaign and you would simply amp up your CPAs. So raise them because you know that this is upper funnel audiences. So you should not be expecting really cheap conversions out of them, but you want to maximize the reach. So simply raise your CPAs and work with affinity audiences. But we're basically now, to summarize this whole strategy, we're looking at, let's say, 2 or 3 campaigns maybe per platform. So you can have your remarketing custom intent campaign on discovery, and then if you need to, you can have an upper funnel affinity campaign on discovery. Exactly the same structure translates to TrueView for Action. Your remarketing custom intent campaign on TrueView for Action coupled with an affinity campaign. And then the third piece of the puzzle here is a smart display campaign where there's no upper funnel for that. It's only performance audiences, but that sort of maximizes your performance across display solutions. And finally, to conclude this section about the strategy itself, I just wanted to bring up an example for you of a customer that had been working with us with display and video for quite a while. They've sequentially built up their success, starting with smart display campaigns, then they added discovery campaigns into the mix, and then they topped it all up with TrueView for Action. And all of that altogether substantially improved the quality of engagement of customers with their website, and it also substantially improved their results in terms of converting those customers. So, better together. If the answer is, what should I do? Discovery or TrueView or Smart Shopping or Search? My answer is always strive for doing them together, because truly better together. All right, that concludes the part about which strategy to pick. Now, let's talk about, once you've selected your audience set, how do you get to convert those people? And so this is where creatives come into play, and creatives are incredibly important. And so if Smart Bidding, for example, alleviates a lot of the day-to-day management of bids for you, creatives are incredibly important that you spend some good time and take very good care of them. And this means a couple of things. One, that you maximize all of the inputs that we require you to. And then secondly, as you're giving us your assets, that those assets are of high quality, clear, crisp. We'll talk about that in just a second. I'll bring a couple of examples in. And so first and foremost, in the world of discovery campaigns, you have a choice there of single image ads and carousel image ads. Lovely. And then in video campaigns, of course, you have your performance creative for TrueView for Action campaigns, and you have maybe your brand creative bumper ads. In the world of the more common display campaigns, either smart display campaigns or standard, we have some exciting updates to responsive ads. And so first things first, you are familiar with the more standard ads. We have made amazing improvements to what they look and feel like. And so you will see that there are all sorts of image enhancements, new designs, and we will continue to do that to create the most beautiful assets for you. Secondly, depending on your vertical, you will see that even your dynamic assets change, because for retailers in the electronics category and for retailers in the clothing category, of course, those assets will have a little bit of a different look and feel. And then what's even more exciting is that we're bringing the world of video into display and the other way around. And I'll touch upon it in just a second. And so with video, what's happening now is that you can very easily attach your video asset into a responsive ad, up to 5 of those as a matter of fact. And that helps you both maximize the reach with your beautiful video asset, not just within YouTube, but outside of YouTube as well, through video in responsive ads. On the other hand, for those of you who do not have that video asset yet, we have this exciting announcement that we now started auto-creating videos for you. You will have that option enabled by default when you're creating a new ad, or if you have some ads running for a longer time already, you just need to look into advanced options and tick on that you're allowed to create auto-create videos for you. The reason this is so exciting is because, first things first, it always increases your reach and your presence, and it's always a stronger way to capture users' attention. I have seen those auto-created videos. They're amazing, as long as your assets are amazing. So let's get to the best practices about how to ensure that your assets are of high quality. So start easy. If you have a strong social presence, nothing should be stopping you to reuse those amazing creatives from social on discovery and display campaigns. And in responsive display ads, you will see there's a scanning option where if you have any public social presence, you can simply sort of scan out the images from there and use them in your creatives with Google. Secondly, I mentioned this before, always maximize the inputs. So if we're asking you to give us 5 headlines or 5 images or 15 images, please do, because this maximizes the return for you. And when you're thinking about those images, think about different audiences. You might have a bit of a younger or an older demographic buying your product. You might have families and not families. Maybe some people will react more to just seeing the product, and then other people will react more to someone using that product in a natural setting. So always think about those variations. What would get a quicker response from someone? What kind of an asset? And then as you're building out those assets, if you have the capacity for it, think about beautiful imagery that captures users' attention. In particular, when we're talking about discovery campaigns, if I'm seeing the ad on a discovery feed as I'm scrolling through to read the news, that ad needs to grab my attention for me to want to stop, look at it, and then it needs to be trustworthy enough for me to want to click on it, correct? And so think about contrast and beautiful imagery here. Put all of your creativity into these images, because interestingly, machine learning does a lot to help connect you with the right customers, but we see that it's that strong creative that's beautiful, that helps convince customers, create some excitement towards your company, and get them to come to the website and to convert ultimately. And also, be sparing with the attention of your creative. So as you see on the lower part of the slide here, that do not try to squeeze in all information into one image. Rather upload a couple of images, right? Because mind you that assets can show small, can show big. And so if you have the asset that's cluttered with overlay buttons, with overlay words, with overlay brands, or maybe with an overlay of 10 products tried to squeeze into the same sort of image, what's going to happen is that it's just going to render small and unclear, and that in the end undermines the performance of campaigns. So put the product or people front and center so that that asset, if need be, can be resized, reduced, and will still maintain its quality, and it's still going to be quite clear what your product is. And then after you've grabbed people's attention with a strong creative, a visual creative and image, think about the text, because the text is the one that elicits trust and will convince people to come to your website and not think that this is something too general or too clickbait or irrelevant for them. And so here I brought to you a couple of my favorite examples of how can you think about phrasing the same value of your product, but in a way that's beautiful and inspiring. And so, for example, watches. How many watch sellers are there? A lot. How many high quality watch sellers? A lot. How do I make my choice? Something has to be relevant for me. And so instead of going and being quite generic about it and saying, we have 1,000 watches and find the one that works for you, everyone has 1,000 watches and I can always find the one that works for me. Think about something that will get people's attention. For example, classic timepieces, handcrafted for life. Do you see how beautifully and poetically what we mean by this is that this is a very reliable watch. Once you buy it, it will last you a lifetime. And then secondly, that this is more around the classic style, right? So if you're selling innovative watches, then of course that phrase would look differently because you're trying to appeal to quite a dynamic and innovative audience instead. Or, for example, wooden watches, then it's almost like you're bringing nature into home through wooden accessories. So always think about those things creatively, brainstorm with your team, because our research has shown that this actually helps ads perform much better when you've put a lot of creative thinking into how you design those assets. As we're done with the assets section now, we finally approached the last stage where we will talk about the full value of your discovery campaigns. How do you measure that? How do you think about it? And also, how do you ensure to allocate the right resource to it so that you truly get the highest success from the start? And before I dive into this section, I'm just going to reinforce again that, guys, we have a team of experts here waiting to answer your questions. So in case you have something that's top of mind for you, but you haven't asked it yet, drop it into the comments and our team will be there to respond to you in real time. All right, full value. So first things first, what's really important to understand is that visual media is very powerful. Through custom intent, it drives direct results, something that we couldn't expect from it before, but now we can because we have solutions like custom intent and remarketing. And then on top of that, because it's visual media, it actually very strongly influences that consumer journey. So, like I said, better together. When you have a couple of solutions running together, you will see that your total profitability is much higher than when you had just the one of them in isolation and not running any other marketing activity. And so adding display ads into your marketing mix will typically result in an 8% uplift of conversions across the entire website, provided that you've dedicated sufficient resource to them. And adding TrueView for Action into your Google mix actually results in an 8% uplift of conversions from search, and also reduces the CPA a little bit. So that's very interesting, and that's why we need to be talking about the full value. So the reason we're also talking about the full value here is because At the moment, unfortunately, you can't quite rely on the default reporting of the results of your campaigns. You need to look beyond. Because mind you, that default reporting will assign all value towards the last click. And in case you have some brand search campaigns, shopping campaigns, discovery campaigns, video campaigns, what's going to happen a lot is that the brand search campaign can get a lot of that credit. And whilst this is fantastic, right? Because we're generating that intent to buy that is then materialized through one of your campaigns. You need to be measuring that impact holistically. You need to become a little bit blind to the fact that between your campaigns, you have a variation of acquisition costs and a variation of volume of conversions. Because what's happening is that certain mid-funnel campaigns, for example, custom intent campaigns, can have a bit higher CPAs. However, without them, the volume of brand search keywords campaigns would go down. So you need to be mindful about that full value. And also when we're talking about display and video full value, of course, that means that we need to think about their impact on users' desire to purchase through visual, through view-through conversions. So let's touch upon that. So first of all, it's important to try and capture all of the conversions because, yes, we know with the recent regulations, with the browsers dropping cookies, you need to ensure that your measurement tools are up to speed, up to date, and that you're using Google site-wide ads tagging. Secondly, you need to be including view-through conversions into analysis of the results. And this is the only way at the moment right now in the Google Ads interface to see that if that discovery campaign facilitated that brand search keyword conversion in the end through an impression, that sort of would be recorded as a view-through conversion ultimately down the line. However, let me stand corrected here for just a moment. View-through conversions are completely separated from click-through conversions. It means that if there was a click on the path, then a view-through conversion is not recorded. Only a standard click conversion is. However, if the discovery ad influenced the purchase and that purchase then happened on your website directly, this is when we would record a view-through conversion. So you will never see two conversions, a click and a view reported if only one sale happened. You will only see one or the other, but never both for the same sale. So we've been very conservative about it, which means that once you're analyzing the results of your discovery campaigns from the start, set your reporting in a way that you're looking at the cost divided by all conversions, click and view through. A lot of technical speak. I hope I didn't bore you to death. I hope you're still with me. In case you need any advice here, please work with your Google representative or read information about this on the blogs, including about our viewability standards, which are also very strict. And so do leverage this for analyzing your results. And then finally, what I encounter a lot in my work is that sometimes customers are almost a little bit distrustful of the fact that we can actually drive sales with display solutions. Guys, we can. You don't need to start bringing in micro conversions and all sorts of newsletter downloads, but not optimizing towards the actual sale. Always from the start, optimize towards the most valuable action for you. And then if needed, you can always bring the second action, an additional one, maybe a sign up for a trial test or a sign up to your newsletter. Of course, you can do that, but always keep optimizing towards the most important action for you, which is most likely a sale. All right, we've spoken about that measurement. We know how we will measure results. How do we make sure that we've set the campaigns for success? And this is where you need to always think about it in terms of, if you have €5, you can't buy a steak, right? Because a steak costs 15, 20, 30, depending on the country that we're talking about here. So to buy a steak, you need to accumulate €30. To buy 5 steaks, you need to accumulate €150. And so when you're starting with discovery campaigns, please don't go stretching your resource into a multitude of campaigns just to try out what works best. No. Pick the strategy that is the closest to your goals. For example, it can be acquiring customers at a certain acquisition cost, target CPA bidding, and then allow for the budget that corresponds to 10, 20 times of that average acquisition cost so that you can allow yourselves to get 10, 20 conversions per day. In the end, maybe you won't be using target CPA bidding, but that proportion of how much it costs you to acquire a customer and how much budget you need to invest to allow for at least a couple of customers acquisition per day, that ratio always needs to hold. And there are a couple of things that we have developed to help you. For example, with that, what should be your realistic cost per acquisition when you're starting a new display campaign? All of that sits now directly in the interface of Google Ads. When you're creating that campaign, we will prompt you based on your own results of your own account, what should that starting acquisition cost be? And then the budget, of course, is up to you. And in just a moment, I'll illustrate how we give you real-time predictions of what you can expect out of performance of those campaigns. But just the one thing before we move away from this best practice, always be mindful that it's better to have less, but with a consolidated resource, with a sufficient resource that we can ensure the quickest learning and strongest results before you move on to the next step, to the next solution. All right? So just don't spread yourselves thin. All right. And so let's translate this into that budget vision. How much do you need to invest during this holiday season? So once you have set campaigns up, you will be able to then understand how to do those budget tweaks thanks to OptiScore recommendations and Performance Planner. However, at the very start, if this is your first strategy, you're just setting up that suite of a performance solution of a discovery campaign, a True View for Action campaign, and maybe a smart display campaign, the minimal you should be thinking of is, like I said in the previous section, allow for that campaign to drive at least 10 conversions per day for you. So your starting bid should be, according to recommendations in the interface, the budget should be somewhere around 10-20 times of that. This is your healthy start. You only need 3 campaigns, but those 3 campaigns need to be with a healthy budget. And then in case you're actually at a stage where you're trying to maximize your presence in the market, then you can calculate your total potential share of voice based on the total available impressions for those audience categories. And this is where, again, the interface will come to help you. Because first and foremost, when you are starting to create your campaign, you will see that based on your bidding and budget combination, we already give you a prediction of how many conversions you can expect to drive. But then in addition to that, we show you what are the available impressions for that category. So for example, if here we're talking about, in this example, about business productivity software, maybe it's bicycles and accessories, maybe it's clothing. The total available impressions is your full size of that audience. This is truly your sort of sprint section of your of the budget, where you're thinking about, if I wanted to have the strongest presence in the market, how much would I have to invest? And so just to go into a little bit of very scrappy mathematics here, you take those total available impressions, you look at the average conversion as a click-through rate for your display campaigns and the average cost per click, and that will give you that approximate spend per week to capture the entire audience. In case you have any trouble with these benchmarks, please always reach out to your Google representative. We are here to help you with the benchmarks. All right. I started very inspiring and then I ended with quite a little detailed, nitty-gritty explanation of how do we work with bids, budgets, creatives, measurement. I hope you stayed with me throughout the full hour. If anything was unclear, please drop your questions. We will stay for a couple of minutes after the session ends to be sure that everything's answered. And what I will leave you with today is, first of all, when we're thinking about the consumer purchase journey, know that it's complex, disjointed, and customers really, really, really appreciate help. So be there to help them choosing your product, choosing the most relevant product or service for them, if possible, across a couple of properties simultaneously. So this is where your smart shopping campaigns, discovery campaigns, True View for Action campaigns are truly solutions built to help simplify that whole complexity. Secondly, recruit new customers efficiently, which means probably don't try blasting the entire market of your country with your ads. Think about those people that have purchase intent already, and in particular, those that have been searching already. And talk to those customers through custom intent on discovery, True View for Action, or to customers looking to buy but not yet on search through smart display campaigns. Thirdly, inspire customers to act with powerful creatives. Always maximize all outputs, always add high quality assets, make it simple for yourself. If you've already created those strong assets for any other media campaigns, simply reuse them in your display campaigns with Google or discovery campaigns. Make it simple, but maximize the input so that we can then help you get the strongest output, strongest return on your investment. And finally, when you are planning for that high impact, ensure to allocate the right resource to your campaigns. Think about your potential highest share of voice in the market altogether. But either way, consolidate and be sure that you have maybe 3 solutions, but those are very strong with the right budget and that you can be successful from the get-go thanks to that. And finally, when you are measuring the results of those campaigns, be mindful that for display and video, the measurement of the full value is special. You need to always consider view-through conversions, and you, if possible, need to look at those results beyond last click in Google Analytics if you have that available. But either way, don't rely on just the default reporting. Set it up accordingly to ensure that you are taking view-through conversions into consideration. That concludes my time with you. I thank you very much for your time. I wish you to be very successful during the high season this year. It's been a tough year for all of us, but I hope that we are always there to help you get the most for your business, the highest value with our fully automated solutions, including on display, on my favorite display. So thank you for tuning in. And later today, don't forget to tune in to, so to say, digitally speak to my colleague Omid about the value of video for performance. Thank you very much. Bye.